Morning all, welcome to sunny Greece, where we've come to drive the all-new second generation Range Rover Evoque. It's a very important car, this, for Jaguar Land Rover, and the UK market will be a very important factor in deciding its success. 1 in 5 examples of the last gen Evoque were sold in Britain. So, what's it got to say for itself? Well, this is the first car on JLR's all-new premium transverse architecture, which is one of those whizzy names for a model platform, which doesn't mean much to a lot of people, but it's basically the platform that will go on to be used by all manner of next generation Jaguars and Land Rovers, the next Disco Sports, the next E-Pace, anything with a transverse engine will use this platform. And it's made of a mix of aluminium and steel and magnesium, and you would think it would take a fair bit of weight out of a car like this, and it would have, if not for the fact that Gaydon has thrown the kitchen sink at this car in terms of new technology in order to make it feel and function a bit more like a fully fledged Range Rover. So as well as the obligatory 4-wheel drive, redesigned all-independent suspension and a 9-speed automatic gearbox, most versions of this car also get a 48-volt mild hybrid electrical system with a supersized lithium-ion battery. This is only an Evoque S with the R-Dynamic kit, so it's actually only sort of lower mid-specification, but it's got a lot of stuff on it, you know. It's got these 10-way heated leather seats, it's got the full high-end dual-screen JLR touchscreen infotainment system, and it's got all the usual electronic off-roading stability and control systems and active safety features, all of which are very important, and all of which we'll just leave to one side, shall we? Yeah, okay. It's got quite a lot of options fitted to it as well, I dare say. Probably a high enough list price to raise an eyebrow or two. It's a Range Rover after all. But I tell you what, it does feel like a different kettle of fish, this Evoque. More grown up, more luxurious, more refined in lots of ways. Maybe not every way, but it does feel different. So there are 6 engines available in the car at launch, or 7 if you count the entry-level 2-litre diesel, which is the only one that comes without 4-wheel drive or the 9-speed auto box or the 48-volt mild hybrid powertrain technology that we talked about before. So if we call it 7, that makes 4 diesel and 3 petrol. Added to that, there'll be another 2 coming along in a year or so, and one of them, interestingly, will be a petrol-electric plug-in hybrid. There you go. That's what an all-new platform will do for the Range Rover Evoque. So this is the mid-range petrol option. This is the P250, which is a 2-litre turbo with either 249 PS or 246 brake horsepower, depending on how you prefer to account for these things. Bit of a mystery, that, to me. Anyway, what do we think? Where do we start? Well, it still looks good, doesn't it? I think it looks different. It's a bit less youthful, a bit less trendy than the last one. Obviously, there's no 3-door anymore, so there's that. That probably makes it look a bit more conservative and grown up. But that's the point. It's trying to be a more grown up car, and it's trying to look more like the sort of full ticket luxury item Range Rover that it's aspiring to be. And whether you like it or not, I think that's a fair enough strategy to adopt. So the interior of the car is developed along a very similar theme. It feels, you know, really sort of rich and ritzy and luxurious in here. A step up, definitely, from where the last car was. They've added about 20mm to the car's wheelbase, which is certainly needed, so there's a bit more space in the back seats. There are 1 or 2 areas maybe where the material quality isn't quite at proper Range Rover level. You know, it never quite was in some areas with the last Evoque. With this one, it's closer, but there are still 1 or 2 sort of wobbly trims. You know, when you start really getting into the nitty-gritty, the kind of moulding on some of the plastics, you can notice areas where it doesn't feel like a really expensive car, but I'm not sure people will do that, really. The likes of me does that. But I guess if you're getting out of a £50,000 car, you could be getting into a higher-end Evoque for the same money, and then maybe you'd notice. The technology that Land Rover has added to the car, though, is mostly very, very impressive. I'm more used to these twin touchscreen infotainment systems now. This is about the third or fourth time I've driven a car that had them fitted, and I can sort of get on with them all right. I don't notice how tricky they are to use because I'm just getting used to them. Otherwise, there's a couple of ways where they've improved visibility around the car. There's something called ground view, which projects an image of the ground under the front wheels onto the infotainment screen here when you're off-roading or when you're parking, just so you can see really clearly what the front wheels are doing and what's near the car. And that's a real help, I have to say. And you wouldn't need to be, crossing the Zambezi to use it. It'd just be handy in a multi-storey car park. Likewise, there's this very clever rear view mirror which is called Clear Sight, and what happens is you click the button and it turns into a video screen, and it takes a bit of getting used to, but obviously it gives you a much clearer, more wide-angle image of what's behind you because it uses a camera on the roof. And occasionally, so when the sun hits it, it reflects. You can't see the screen anymore, but all you do is flick it back to a normal rearview mirror. Happy days. So what about the engine, which you can just about hear now? It's good. I'm not sure it is brilliant. It certainly suits the kind of luxury demeanour of the car, though. It's nice and quiet and smooth, really well isolated, really unobtrusive on the motorway. It suits that grown-up character that the car now has. It's not the most frugal engine in the world, though. Mild hybrid or not, you'd maybe get 35 to the gallon out of it on a good day. On a sort of an average day, maybe 27, 28. Will that be enough for this car? Well, I tell you what, it doesn't feel particularly fast. I don't think you'd guess it was a 250 horsepower engine, only because this car is pretty heavy. It's actually put on about 50 or 60 kilos compared with the last Evoque, and it feels it. It doesn't exactly mooch along particularly quickly. So I think if it were mine, shock horror to be recommending a diesel engine in a modern SUV. How very dare I? But yeah, I would. I'd have a D240. It's only a couple of tenths slower to 60 than this, but it's got another 100 pound-foot of torque, and I think that would probably work better with this gearbox, which just tends to hunt and shift about a bit too much if it's not quite making enough torque. But it's the Evoque's ride and handling that betray this character change that it's been through more clearly than anything else. This feels like a much bigger car now than the last one ever did. It's sort of traded off some of that cheery handling agility that the first one had for more of a sort of a grown-up character. So the ride isolation's really good. It's come on a lot. The ride comfort, the high-speed stability. It's got this really grown-up feel now, which you might say a Range Rover ought to have. But it's also lost some of the fun factor that the Mark 1 had, some of that dynamic character. Is that a shame? I think some people will think so, but I think most people will appreciate what this car has gained. For my taste, there are times when I think the steering feels a little bit over-assisted, and I'd probably avoid the 20-inch rims on this car. This car has optional 20s, and they don't round off that sense of ride comfort as well as a smaller rim would, but I dare say a typical Evoque owner would rather have a good-looking 20-inch rim than the last word in ride refinement. Apart from all that, and accepting the fact that it's going to be a fairly expensive car, because Range Rovers always are, I would say this car, it's ready to pick up where the last Evoque left off, and I'm sure it'll do really well. It's a different sort of Evoque, but it's better in most of the ways that will matter to people.